Alright everybody, this time I got a more serious discussion ready to go on, and this time it has a lot to do with Tarkov, which is a rather interesting point of view because normally when I think of Tarkov, I think of one of the world's greatest extraction shooters. But based on the title, you guys can probably guess that there is some minor minute things that are wrong with Tarkov, and I guess to a certain extent, it does deserve to be discussed, so let's get right into it. Out of all games that I played that were extraction shooters, Tarkov happens to just be the one that's just up there when it comes to me recommending a video game. If you're really into weapons or how they work or how they're designed or even how to modify them to the smallest little detail that you possibly can, I would have to say that Tarkov is the number one when it comes to realism, when it comes to gun modifications. Like 100% not gonna take that credibility away from Tarkov. That is an unbelievable achievement that this game is always going to have, and I'm never gonna discredit it for it. That being said, however, there are some minor points I do need to talk about with the idea of Tarkov's player count actually dropping down. But of course, as of most recent events, when they started to add more updates into the game, of course the player count would simply just rise up, because every time Tarkov has any form of a live event happening, it is some of the funnest, craziest amount of missions and tasks that I've ever had to receive in any video game up to date. And with everything like that being said about this game, you're probably all wondering why in the holy hell would I even have a title that's really saying Tarkov's player count isn't really dying? Well, this is where the problems come in with Tarkov, and unfortunately this is the same thing with every single other live service game out there, and that is when the events or updates are so far apart that players lose interest in the game. But there is an upside to this. By the time I'm making this video, there's already been a release of another event called The Labyrinth, which was released back in 2007, March of 2025, which is good. We have yet another live stream game that has a very huge open event that everybody can enjoy from both PvP and even PvE aspects of Tarkov. All that being said though, there are a few things about Tarkov that I find myself to be even questioning. What can I exactly do in this game other than just constantly trying to do the tasks, finish them, prestige, and even enjoy maybe a few aspects of PvE or even the arena time to time? And that's when it absolutely hits me. Tarkov has always been mostly on beta, and I'm saying that because of the fact that there is no actual way to escape Tarkov despite it being the main premise of the entire game. There has not been a way to actually escape from Tarkov in years, even since it first released way back then, and is still on beta even today, which could be a massive turnoff for a couple of players because of the fact that there's no real end game for Tarkov. There was theories and rumors about Tarkov actually finally getting to a point where you could actually escape it in order to be able to receive a brand new prestige, but that turned out to be a complete I wouldn't say lie, but more of a complete misunderstanding, because all prestige mode really does is just gives you a little bit of an album, a little number, and there you go. There's your prestige. There's really no reason to worry about prestige mode. I could see why players in PvP, let alone if there was an option for it in PvE, which I would have found it to be a little bit more viable there, because it's not like everybody's account doesn't just get wiped every year in PvP anyways. And in spite of that, I find it kind of interesting that somehow the entire community for Tarkov is actually completely split down the middle because of so many different game modes. Since we both have PvP, PvE, and as well as the arena to play now, I can see where that could be a little confusing to a lot of players. It also doesn't help the fact that most of these modes do function off one another, but the problem that I see here is that PvE, for example, only functions off just PvE. You can't really earn any bonuses or any other type of event-based items unless the event can correlate with it to do so. Same thing goes to the arena and regular PvP mode. I would normally take this off as BSG trying to make more money off separate game modes in order to keep the game alive, which is very reasonable to be honest, despite the fact that each game mode has its own separate dog tag, price tag for each one, which could be considered both a bit greedy and a little bit disingenuous to the player base. But there is something else that they did that was rather horrendous. Anyone who's played Tarkov for years at a time would already know what I'm talking about, and that would have to be the new edition of the Unheard edition of Escape from Tarkov, costing more than $250 just to be able to have the maximum amount of extension you can have on your actual storage, plus the fact that it comes in with a coat and a couple of weapons, despite the fact you can pretty much earn all this playing the game, which you're literally paying $250 for a code at that rate, bro. Like, I don't even know what else to tell you. The Unheard edition alone was enough to cause a lot of discrepancies amongst the actual Tarkov community, and I can't really argue or debate with it. It's kind of a pointless buy-in for BSG to even have an edition like this available in the market, to be fair. I'm mostly laughing at the fact that it's just one of those editions that they decided to put in for what looks to be a quick buck, but I'm not even gonna deny myself the trench coat. I could definitely see why players would definitely want to pay $250 to grab it. Plus, also with the inclusion of extra pockets, storage, weapons, and everything else, it does make starting off in the game again a lot more simple and easy. To also be fair, I mean, it isn't a pay to win type of edition, so I can't even get mad at BSG for that. But now we're gonna go ahead and talk about the real nooks and crannies of this entire discussion, because it's basically the main reason why everybody came here for. I just needed to fill you up in at least a little bit of history with BSG, but it involves questionable editions of Tarkov, I will say that. But now let me go ahead and get to what this video is really about, and that would be the weird circumstances of Tarkov supposedly losing its player count. The sources I'm using for this player count type of tracking are actually based on two separate websites, because I need to do a side-by-side comparison just to make sure that these websites at least have a close enough estimate as to like how many players there are actually active in Tarkov. The first player count that I'm looking at is from activeplayer.io for Escape from Tarkov, and it's telling me that the online players per hour is at about 140,000, closer to 139,500, but I'm going to do an approximate here. Active players in the 30 days were over 2,025,000, which is really good. Active players from Tarkov that has gained in the past 30 days is 6,462 players, and these are players apparently barely coming into the game, which again, with those stats, that is actually really good for a live service game. That's usually a sign to me that the game is doing really well. And from a different source and website, which is on playerauctions.com, on the player count for Escape from Tarkov, it tells me a similar status of numbers being closer to 127,000 players still being active in Tarkov, at least around the daily weekly average. Now, when it comes down to the lowest point it's been in over a year, of over 360 days that I tried to look through and make sure that that data was at least somewhat viable, it has gone down to the lowest of 124,000 players. But the thing is that I don't know if these numbers are approximate per region or state or country or anything like that. These are just the approximate data that we have for at least the US alone. And I have to admit, a game with 125,000 players that are active basically almost every day is pretty damn good in my book. Alright, now it's the time of the video where I go ahead and summarize everything I talked about and pretty much give my final take on everything that I just literally discussed. I honestly don't personally think that Tarkov is dying. That is one of the biggest no's that I ever have to give to anybody on the internet. Like, I'm sorry, but Tarkov has pretty much been active and strong for more than what feels like 6 to 8 years now. And it's still going strong even with the lackluster amount of updates, because even when this game is not being updated, it still has a humongous large player count, and people still make hundreds and thousands of videos about Tarkov almost on the daily. So I really doubt that this game is ever going to run to a point where it's officially done, unless for whatever reason Battlestate Games out of nowhere just literally says, like, guys, we're going to pull the plug, we're going to finally end Tarkov, you all can finally escape. That would be the only optimal reason I would see that Tarkov is finally being like dropped down by players, because even I have to admit, this addictive masterpiece of a goddamn extraction shooter is still going to be number one in my book, 100%. And I can regret saying that now, because I feel like Battlestate Games is probably going to see this video and they're probably going to want to put an update that's going to make players finally escape Tarkov, and until then I guess I'm going to slap myself in the dick and call myself silly. And with that wild statement finally said, I'm going to have to call it the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed this video regardless. Go ahead and tell me in the comment section of what you think about the state of Tarkov as it is, and what kind of updates you would actually love to see in Tarkov in the near future, because so far as what I'm seeing with this game, I honestly just don't see it dying. I really don't. I don't see the logic or reasoning as to why it should, but what I can say is this: as long as they keep updating the game, keep keeping the community happy and updated amongst patches, events, and everything else in between, and try to correlate those events with every single one of their game modes, Tarkov will do just fine. Well, that's pretty much my 2 cents on that. Hope you all had a fantastic day, had a fantastic night, don't know what type of region anybody's in, but either way, hope you all enjoyed the video regardless. Go ahead and tell me what you all think. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed it that much, and you go ahead and tell me what you all think of Tarkov. Until then, I will see you all next time.